Guys, I recently just put together my weapon with the EX augments, thanks to the help of fellow content creator and good friend of the channel, MKP. And oh my god, the amount of damage that we can put out between being level 90, these new EX augments, and our weapons is insane. Let's talk about these EX augments. Yo, what is going on, my fellow weebs? Chrono here, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're gonna be talking about all of the different EX augments, what to look for, how they work, and basically everything in between, and showing off my completed weapon over here in NGS. But if you guys are new to the channel, as always, my name is Chrono, premier for PSO2 content. Would much appreciate to subscribe to work right towards that 10K mark, hopefully at the end of this year. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. So I have been giddy like a schoolgirl when it comes to my weapon, dude. It's been ridiculous. It has been so much fun to use. I have essentially become a Guts Pokemon holding Flame Orb. And when I explain to you how these EX augments work, it's going to be hilarious to you how accurate that sentence actually is. But to explain this, we need to go over all of the different EX augments, what they are, and how you actually get them on your weapon, so on and so forth. We're not going to go super far into it. The augment transfer system is going to be its own video. That's probably the next video that's going to come out on the channel. This one is just going up pretty quickly because people want to know how these EX augments work. They're affecting the market, so on and so forth. So I want to make sure that people are aware, that way they can make the most money as possible, as quickly as possible. That way they can afford these augments, because the augment transfer system was not what we expected, or was it exactly what we wanted? It's close, but not quite. So EX augments, how do they work? So the new 11-star weapons drop with 3 EX augments. And those EX augments, when you transfer them over to your weapon, will remain on the weapon. You then, of course, can augment the other slots. Since we are at plus 90, after you go to 81, you get a 7th slot, meaning we have 3 EX augment slots and 4 regular slots. Now, EX augments will have, in most cases, 4.5% potency. They'll have 2% potency floor, and they'll have an extra effect denoted by their suffix. And their prefix will tell you what their actual effect is going to do. For example, this one is EX gradual pressing R. So what this tells you is EX gradual pressing is my prefix. That tells me what this actually does, and the suffix is the R. The R gives me all down resistance. That's what R actually stands for. And the prefix gradual pressing is what gives me my second effect after the little slash here. It's a little weird the way they kind of push this together, so you have to get used to seeing that slash there. But essentially what it gives me is increases down factor to enemies by 5% for every 10 seconds to a maximum of 20%. Now that does take a little while for it to go through. And we're going to talk about the different EX augments, and we'll leave these for later. But we're going to talk about all the different EX augments you can actually get on your weapons. So give me a second while I pull that up for us. So this is a link over from Reddit. I'm actually going to, let me double check. So it's No Unico. Thank you for posting this. It's a list of every single one of the different augments, EX augments, what they do and what their suffixes mean along with it. I'm actually gonna move myself a little bit out of the way. I'm covering this just a bit, and I don't know how to not cover it basically. So hold on a second. Let's get me out of the way. Let's just. Why can't I? Can I get out of the way? Oh, there we go. We're just gonna go way over here in the corner, right? We're out of the way now. Okay, cool. So, like I mentioned, there's a prefix and there's a suffix. So we're gonna talk about the suffixes first, really quick, because they're the shortest of them, and then we'll talk about all the different effects, the prefixes. So they're denoted by the different letters, these letters that are here. You've got H, P, X, D, and R, and they're pretty easy to understand once you get how the suffixes work. So H is HP. If you have something H, you're gonna get the effect that it shows plus HP plus 25. P is 3 PP. X is HP and PP. You can think of this as like the combined across together. So it's HP, PP. A little bit less HP, a little bit less PP, but you get both together. D, damage resistance, or DR. So D stands for damage resistance. And R is all down resistance, or basically plus elemental resistance, or plus resistance in general. So H, P, X, D, and R. Once you get used to these, you'll see them. It'll be second nature. For the most part, most people are going to be searching mostly for P and X, unless you just flat out do not need any PP whatsoever. Some classes are very PP efficient. Gunner comes to mind. where you might find DR more useful or maybe H more useful. But realistically speaking, we're too early for you guys to really be focusing too much on these suffixes. Focus primarily on the prefixes for right now, because I will tell you, when you first start to get these items to drop and try to sort through them, you get a ton of them and they are extraordinarily overwhelming with how many you get, as well as how many combinations you can foresee. So it's going to be kind of difficult for you guys to sort through all of this and kind of get a good idea of how this works. Take all information you see here with a grain of salt. A lot of this has been untested. We've tested as much of it as we can, and a lot of this just kind of makes sense. So I can tell you what I've personally tested and what we've tried out and what's worked well for us, and then tell you what my thoughts are on everything else that we have seen pop up. So let's go over it. Start things off, we have light attack protect. So already I'm going to say a caveat here. I'm not 100% sure how this works out. We have light attack protect, and heavy protect, or heavy attack protect is I believe what it's called in game. You see it's 30% resistance against non-boss enemies, and then in game it says damage resistance of 15% against non-boss enemies as well. I believe this is supposed to get against boss enemies, or these are supposed to be reversed and this is just a better version of what light attack is. I don't believe this is correct. So again, take this with a grain of salt, but it is just damage resistance overall, and it's against specific targets. One thing you'll see is you can see potency here on the left-hand side. This is going to mostly be 4.5% most of the time. If it is lower, there's usually going to be some added thing or some condition as to how you get it to be a bit higher. So just keep that in mind as we go along. First, we have third, we have Dazzle Camo. Dazzle Camo, of course, a 4.5% potency. That's going to be consistent. Also keep in mind that also includes a 2% potency floor. It isn't shown here, but all of them have 2% potency floor, so just assume that that's there. This gives you threat level reduction even if you attack. So basically, this is supposed to be the effect that you would get from subclassing Ranger. This allows you to essentially not be married to that subclass. If you want to be able to get Stealth Strike, essentially, you can get it without having to take Ranger subclass. I'm not 100% sure how much stronger this is, or if this is the same strength as it. From what we understand so far, it does seem to be roughly the same amount. However, haven't seen data mines, so we'd have to wait for them to pull up that information. Again, keep that in mind moving forward. It's just an option in case you don't want to be stuck on playing the Ranger subclass. Stealth Wall. Stealth Wall is our first conditional extra bit of damage. The Stealth Wall is 4%. However, damage resistance is plus 10% attack against enemies attacking you. So you get 10% damage res if something is attacking you. You get 1.5% potency if it's not attacking you. So this synergizes pretty well with the fact that range classes do not want to have threat against the enemies. And as you can probably start to think, you probably see the gears are beginning to turn in your head, that a good combination might be Stealth Wall plus Dazzle Camo. This gives you the reduction in threat while also giving you damage for not having threat. Classes like, let's say, for example, Force, you might want to think about picking this up. However, keep in mind, this is specific to group-based content. If you are a solo player or you like to do solo challenges, you are always going to have threat, meaning that this will always be the 4% potency. It will not be as good. Or maybe you play with a group of friends, you know for a fact that they may not be as geared as you, or they may not play as optimally as you do. And even with something like Dazzle Camo, you may still pull threat off of your friends. In that situation, Stealth Wall is not a good choice. However, for the vast majority of players who are playing primarily in groups, who realistically aren't too worried about taking threat or hyper optimizing, Stealth Wall plus Dazzle Camo may be a good combination to consider. It also may be a good combination to consider to sell. Something to keep in mind because these 11 stars are sellable. Next, we have Risky Stance. This is one of the first ones I've come across that I'm not 100% sure if this works the way I think it works. I'm pretty sure it doesn't work this way. This is more of like wishful thinking, but we're going to talk about it here regardless. So Risky Stance is 4.5% potency. It gives you 30% chance to recover 10 PP when you are hit. Specifically when you are hit. It doesn't say when you take damage, but it says when you are hit. First thing, 5-second cooldown, and then you have a 10% chance of taking 1 damage to yourself every 10 seconds. Now, I specify these because they're actually separate in these two ways, right? It's a little slash in between them first off, but you have a 30% chance to recover PP when you get hit, and then a 10% chance of just taking damage. Well, this isn't technically getting hit, and this isn't technically taking damage. So keep that in mind. it could be when you get hit, but not necessarily take damage. And this could be when you take damage, but not necessarily get hit. So the fact that these are together, this is pretty common where they kind of have like alternating sides of things, where you kind of get a bonus here or a bonus there. So I could definitely foresee this being something that like is like, while you're not actively getting hit, you have a chance to take damage. However, when you do get hit, you have a chance to recover PP. So it's just, it might be a trade-off sort of thing. Realistically speaking, I didn't really see a way that this kind of mattered all that much. Now, there is a camp of thought that I did think about as well, that what if these two work together? I'm not saying they do. I'm not saying I tested this. I recommend you check it out for yourself or wait for someone else to test it for you. But if this is a situation where anytime you take damage, or every time you get hit, regardless of you taking damage, you have a chance to recover PP, and you taking this damage counts as you getting hit, in theory, there's a 10% chance there's a 10% chance of you taking that damage. There's a 30% chance of you proccing that hit on yourself. Realistically speaking, in actual combat, it's not going to make much of a difference, but it's still fun to think about all the same. Moving on, we have patient defense. So damage resistance plus 5% on HP decrease, up to 25% max bonus reset if no damage is taken after 30 seconds. Keep that in mind. HP decrease. That is going to come back. There are things that will decrease your HP. We'll talk about them. So, and if no damage is taken after 30 seconds, of course it resets. So something again to keep in mind. Endure PP or Endure Pain PP boost. Photon blast gauge plus 2% on HP decrease. Again, an HP decrease mechanic. Not necessarily take damage, but an HP decrease. Has a 10-second cooldown. Pretty straightforward, right? As long as you take some damage, your HP decreases once every 10 seconds, you get 2% to your photon blast gauge. Nothing too out of the ordinary there. Moving on, we have shortage PP burn up. This one's pretty fun. You guys probably noticed it on my weapon. So, shortage PP burn up. Burn occurs when 100 PP is consumed. During burn, natural PP recovery speed is increased by 30%. Burn potency decrease is nullified. Now, I need to explain this because I wasn't aware of this beforehand. I just never thought about it because you really can't do anything about status effects. So, if you are burned by an enemy, just like they hit you with fire and you get burned, you actually do 10% less damage. You have a multiplier of 0.9%, meaning that you do lose some damage if you're burned. What this does is if you spend up to 100 PP, you light on fire, so you get the burn debuff, and the burn does not reduce your damage. The burn potency decrease is nullified. You don't get the reduction in damage. Now, I don't know if that means that if you're already on fire, let's say for example you get burned and then you go through 100 PP and then it overwrites the burn or whatever, and then you have that burn there, because you can't overwrite this burn. Like you can spend 100 PP, and what that means is like I can spend 50 PP, regen 50 PP, spend 50 PP, and then bam, it procs the burn. That's how that works. It's just spend 100 PP. You can't spend 100, and then you can spend 100 again while you're already burning to refresh the buff again. So you can continue to burn, and what happens is you will take more damage. So it's like a higher tier of burn. The burn is 1% of your max HP every 2 seconds. Now, I have had that stack up all the way up to 20 HP per second. 20 HP every 2 seconds, which is basically 10 HP a second. It sounds pretty bad, but realistically speaking, it's actually not nearly as bad as you might think. Unless you're getting slapped around a whole lot, you're fighting something really, really hard where your rest assigns are really, really stretched to the limit. This is not nearly as bad as it sounds. I have currently been messing with this, and again, we're going to talk about why I've been having this on why I have this on my weapon in just a moment when we get around to the synergy for it. Fortune Sign. Fortune Sign is 20% chance that resta or reverse signs won't be consumed when the effects are used. The effect starts 10 seconds after being equipped. This is basically the same effect that Wakers have on their actual tree. You'll start to see this pretty commonly where there'll just be stuff that comes from other classes' trees on these weapons, these different augments, these EX augments. So pretty cool overall. I believe it stacks with Wakers, so I'm not sure if it's 10% and then 20% or if it's 20% or whatever their percentage is. I forgot off the top of my head, but it's definitely pretty dope. Just frame counter. Sidestep counter occurs when you perform a normal attack after you break fall, a launch, or a knockback. So what that means is that whenever you get knocked back or get knocked down, when you're about to hit the ground, you can press the jump button and you can break fall, which has your character recover quicker, which a lot of people just spam their button and it usually works for most time. But you have your character recover quicker instead of you falling to the ground and having to get back up again. When you do that, if you press normal attack afterwards, like right after, essentially, you're going to do a sidestep counter of your specific weapon. So it's a way to kind of get some damage out after you get hit. I don't personally find this to be very interesting. I try not to get hit as often as possible. So getting something when you do get hit is kind of, I don't know, I think it's a little silly, but you guys may like it. It's up to you. And gradual pressing. So gradual pressing, of course, 5% potent, 4.5% potency, increases down factor to enemies by 5% every 10 seconds, maximum of 20%. That does mean that, 40 seconds have to pass for you to be able to get your maximum 20%. However, and this is again one of those situations where, take it with a grain of salt, we don't know how that applies to enemies and how you can take advantage of it. Now, as being a class that does do a lot of down factor, that applies a lot of down factor, I find it useful to me personally as a bouncer to go ahead and try to push a bit more down factor. Now, if you're not getting an extra down in that actual piece of content that you're doing, it's effectively pointless. It's not actually doing anything. I wasn't specifically going for gradual pressing. It just happened to be on the weapon that had the other two things I really wanted on it. So I figured, you know what, might as well be nice. It's not a big deal. It's cool. It's there, right? However, again, big however, depending upon how this works, if this does apply to bosses, this is actually where it'll be very useful. Because you're able to apply extra down factor and you're fighting that boss for definitely more than 40 seconds in most situations. It does depend on, like, is there a radius around you? How big that radius is? Is it applied when you specifically attack? Do you just have more down factor damage that you deal when you attack to the enemy? Do they have less down factor to actually have to build up before you get it down? All of these things are very specific, so I highly recommend you guys check out the channel. When we have more specifics, I will definitely either pin a comment or I'll go over this in a separate video, more in detail and more in depth. So it's nice, but it's not, even if it does do these things, right? So for example, let's say, for example, this does work on bosses like this. It might have a small bit of use in like speed running specific situations, but in casual everyday use, it won't be any more than like, this is a nice thing to have along with everything else I'm going for. Tech arms. This name, I don't know why this isn't just called Tech Arts. It's quite literally Tech Arts from base PSO2. I kind of wish it was Tech Arts. It kind of goes along with the Tech Arts customizations we have, but it is called Tech Arms. Localization team. Gotta love you guys. PP consumption minus 15% when using a different PA or technique. Basically means when you use your first PA, cool. Yeah, let's say you use PA1, cool, you use your regular amount of PP. PA2 now costs 15% less. If you use PA1 again, because it's different from PA2, it costs 15% less. If you use PA3 now, it's different from PA1, it also costs 15% less. As long as you're using a different PA or technique every single time, it uses 15% PP, less PP. The only thing that, again, this is something that has to be tested, I don't know offhand, is if it's PA to technique, if that actually works. If you go from technique to PA and PA to technique, if the same thing happens. From what I understand of how this works, it should. However, I leave nothing up to chance. I highly recommend you guys check this out yourselves. If it doesn't, not a huge deal. It will only affect a certain number of classes, but classes like Fighter, where they have active combos they want to go for that actually do help them out, might be very, very useful in that specific situation. Next on the docket, we have one that I feel like a lot of people are going to use quite a bit. It's actually one of the better ones, I think personally, for the average player, Lively HP. So Lively HP is 4% potency. However, when you are at 95% or higher HP, you get an extra 1.5 and 5% damage resistance. So you will get up to 5.5% potency and 5% damage resistance as long as you are basically more or less at max HP. This is actually pretty useful and will have some synergy with another augment that we'll talk about here in just a moment, which is a throwback in my opinion. Shortage HP. This one is a little bit divisive. So this one is 4.5% potency. This is actually the only one of its kind where it does have a condition. However, it does have its 4.5% potency, and I believe that's primarily because of what the condition is. When your HP is at 50% or lower, your potency is increased by 1.5% and you get 30% damage resistance. So when you're at half HP or lower, you get even more potency. You go upwards of 6% with 30% damage resistance. The problem is there's no active way to cut your life down to 50% and keep it consistently there. You have things like Force, where you can use, it's one skill that gives extra PP regen that will cut by 20%. but that's by 20%. And even if you use it twice, that's only by 40%. And if anyone heals you, you're back up, your HP's back up again. If any Tector uses, what is it, overdrive or over something, over limit, over whatever it's called, overemphasis maybe I think is what it's called. If any Tector uses that, you're back up above 50%, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're basically trolled by them. So at the moment, there is no way to lock your HP at 50% or lower. This is basically something that was very similar to what Fighter used to use, where fighters, whenever they used to use their limit break, it was like limit break back in base game. It's over or something like that. It's over limit or something like that. Now I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I just know that I like it less than limit break. I keep calling it limit break, but essentially what it is now is you just take increased damage instead of having cut HP. I kind of wish it was the cut HP again, because this would be the fighter potency augment. This would be great for them. This would be fantastic. If you could cut their HP by half, then they could use this consistently. And I just think that's great. I think that's a fantastic thing to have. Hysterical strength. I love this augment. So this is what turns me essentially into a guts Pokemon holding a flame orb. The hysterical strength is 4% potency, but during ailment, you get an extra 2% potency. You also get extra PP recovery plus 10% and damage resistance plus 10%. Well, we talked about a specific augment earlier, shortage PP burn, that lights us on fire, which is an ailment, which also decreases or gets rid of the burn potency nullification. So with those two together, we'll talk about it more later. Anyway, that's just a combination that I really like, and I think it's going to be actually very, very useful. I think it might be close to one of the meta combinations, to be perfectly honest. Hysterical strength plus shortage PP burn essentially lights you on fire. From what I have tested, at least on my end, this hasn't happened to me, and I have negative like 133 elemental resistance. You don't get a second ailment. Like, I haven't been second status effect unless I'm just extraordinarily lucky. I have never been status affected twice in this game ever. I've been status affected, that's fine. I've never had double status effects on me. It's either one or the other. Usually when I have one, I can't get the other. The only one that I've seen that bends that rule is like the physical one, like it's physical reduction or something along those lines. That one still tends to work. Outside of that, if I have an ailment on me, I can't get another one. And if I'm forcing burn on me and burn also isn't reducing my damage, well, I can't get another ailment. So yeah, basically guts Pokemon holding a flame orb. If you guys know your Pokemon lore, kind of crazy, or know your competitive Pokemon, excuse me. Either way, moving on, gradual PP is very straightforward. You just recover 7 PP every 5 seconds. I think it's pretty solid. I don't think there's anything crazy to talk about there. And then we have auto rest assign, which is basically a 1-for-1 of automate half line. And it goes very, very well along with lively HP. Basically keeping your HP topped up. So whenever you fall below 50%, you'll be popping a rest assign, which usually will get you right back up to where you need to be, if not exactly where you need to be. Moving on, we have sign shielding. So sign shielding gives you damage resistance 20% once per use of rest assign or reverse assign. It says yellow can use rest assign even with max HP. This basically just means that, well, first off, the yellow part is just like an extra piece of information that you see in the text. I believe this was actually pulled from the data mines probably, which is why it has that weird way that they have a little yellow thing in there. But either way, essentially the way this works is once, like you basically, when you take a hit, after you pop a rest assign, you have 20% damage resistance. You lose the damage resistance when you take that hit, basically. So that's why it says once per use of rest assign or reverse assign. So one time whenever you heal or whenever you rest someone, 20% damage resistance. You can even use a rest assign when you have max HP, which is very nice, meaning that you can basically set yourself up to always have that damage resistance as long as you have enough rest assigns. This would go really, really well along with something like fortune sign, where you have a chance not to use the sign itself. So super cool there. Basically makes it so you have more chances of using your signs. Probably can pair that along with Waker to make it so you have even more chances of not using your signs, and you can continuously keep your damage resistance up as much as possible, making Waker even more of the tanky choice when it comes to subclasses. Next, we have the enemy PP field, or enemy field PP, excuse me, plus 6 PP whenever you defeat an enemy nearby. This is essentially just the effect that Force has, allowing you to essentially make a weapon that is specifically set up to AoE enemies or large packs of enemies without needing to have Force sub, making sure your PP is topped off consistently. This just means if an enemy nearby you dies, you get PP, which is fantastic. This is why, people say either sub force or play force for PSE burst, because you will absolutely crush everything while you have basically an overflow of infinite PP. Enemy down PP, so max 50% of PP recovery when you down a nearby enemy. So anytime an enemy gets down, you get that 50% PP. Now it's worth mentioning, previously this did not apply if that wasn't an elemental or physical down, an elemental or physical down. They recently changed fighter so that their bonuses apply to all types of downs. We can assume that this works the same way. However, it has not been thoroughly tested. So again, I would recommend taking that with a grain of salt. Tough Mind. Tough Mind, an incapacitating attack will leave you with 1% HP in the moment of invulnerability. 300-second cooldown, starts 10 seconds after you equip the weapon. So this is essentially just the effect from, I think it was Atlas EX, that allowed you to survive with 1 HP. It had a 300-second cooldown. So it's just a cheat death. It allows you to have a cheat death available to you if you think you're about to die, or think you're close to death. It does take 10 seconds to activate, so you can't just quick swap to it when you're about to die, like you're about to take a hit or whatever. But if you are about to go into something that's a bit more dangerous, you can go ahead and have this available and ready to go. Fortitude. So Fortitude, when your PP blocks below 10%, recover 200 PP and has a 180-second cooldown. This is just basically a PP refresh. This is the light stream effect from old weapons back in base PSO2. You can swap over to this as like having, essentially if you build a second weapon with this, you can have a weapon that just has a ton of PP on it. And you can make sure that whenever you drop below to that 10% amount, or you're about to drop to 10% amount, swap over to it, use some PAs, get that chunk of PP. It is worth mentioning, at least back on the live stream version of this weapon, you did have to lose some PP. You couldn't just be at below 10%, switch to your weapon, wait 10 seconds, and then bam, it immediately jumps up. You just have to lose a little bit of PP at the very least to go ahead and cash this effect for it to work. So you want to, switch over to it at maybe at 40% PP or something like that if you're going to go for the refresh. For the record, I don't think this is that useful personally, just because previously you used a lot of these weapons for movement. You don't really do that in NGS. So it could be useful. You could have the nice PP refresh, but depends on your setup. I would actually find it pretty nice to have for my shortest PP burn setup. I do burn enough PP to not be able to keep up and have to normal attack a little bit. It would be nice for a nice little refresh to keep my damage up continuously moving forward. And last but not least, Prize Shield. There are 3 shields that negate enemy damage, 120-second cooldown after all shields are lost. Not bad. This is definitely a good tanky choice. Essentially is the effect that for you guys in Lucille. Difference is this doesn't actually reflect damage, it just negates damage, and the cooldown doesn't start until after you lose all 3 shields. That's pretty bad. And that means that you have to take those 3 hits, and then you have a 120-second cooldown. If the cooldown started when you lost a shield, and it was per shield, I think this would be much better. However, it's not how it works, so unfortunately, take it for what it is. And that is everything. As far as different combinations I think that are going to be great moving forward, lively HP is going to be pretty much universal for anyone, can pretty much use this. I mean, having max HP is not that big of a deal, but something like lively HP and shortage HP are not going to go well together, right? You have one that you want to have max HP, when you want to have lower than half HP. I don't think shortage HP is going to be that great. We don't have a way of max or keeping our HP below 50%, so not really a good choice. Historical Strength and shortest PP burn up are a fantastic combination. I absolutely love this combination. I do tons of damage with this, and I'm able to actually maintain quite a bit of damage overall. And the burn isn't nearly as bad as you would think. Dazzle Camo and Stealth Wall we talked about, decent combination. However, if you're someone who solos, not really something you want to go for. I'm trying to think of the other combinations I saw that were pretty solid. Something like Lively and Auto Rest Sign. Not a bad combination to keep your lively up without having to think about it. However, you can also just press the rest assign button. Not that difficult to just press. Whenever you take a hit, below 95%, press the rest assign. Keep going forward. However, it's also nice to not have to think about pressing it. It just pops whenever you drop below 50%. However, if you are below 95%, but not below 50%, you're in a weird spot that you need to press your button anyway. So that's something to keep in mind. Enemy PP field will be nice for building up weapons, fight against just random enemies out in the field. It's going to be really good for those 6-star weapons that we use to farm deck space. That'll be nice to have on those. If you haven't built one already, that's not a bad idea to go ahead and build one. Down, this one I don't really find much use for, to be honest. It's like something I believe that Bouncer already has built into its kit for its class. So, like, it's kind of whatever. You can go for it if something you might be able to set up like some extra damage combos, but I don't think it's gonna be a lot useful. I think the ones to keep an eye out for are gonna be Fortitude, Tough Mind, Enemy PP or Enemy Field PP, Gradual PP, Lively HP. What else? These are like the solo ones I'm looking at, keeping an eye out for. Combinations will be Hysterical PP as well as Shortage PP Burn Up. I don't think you're going to use either one of these solo. I think you're going to use them together. This isn't okay. This isn't bad solo, but like Hysterical Strength, like you're not going to be able to consistently have status ailments or be able to control that on you. So having something like Shortage PP Burn Up is going to be fantastic. It is worth mentioning that technically back in base PSO2, fighters limit break counted as a status ailment on them. So they were able to take advantage of things like this. I don't believe it works that way now. So I would definitely test that out. It's up to you guys to test it out, take a look at it, see if it works that way for you. But it's something that did work back in base PS2, so I feel like it's worth mentioning. Combinations like Fortune Slip and Auto Rest Sign are not a bad combination, or Fortune Slip and where's the other one? Sign Shielding, also not a bad combination. Anything that basically uses your rest assigns, then gives you the chance not to use them up. Definitely cool combinations to go for. But that's mostly about it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Apologies, it turns out that I have something going on with my teeth right now, right in the middle of recording this video. So if I sound a bit weird, that is the reason for it. I'll be recording some other videos covering things like the new Augment transfer system, my thoughts on the actual story, the new zone, first time runs, all that good stuff. But I will go ahead and leave this video here because it's already long enough as it is. You guys, let me know if there's anything that you guys came across that was super awesome. Let me know if you've made any amazing amounts of money or insane combinations that you're able to do crazy amounts of damage with. And I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, my friends. Peace out.